there is an interesting dynamic that you guys are probably going to cheer for. And so I'm going to give you this story, and it's going to be cheerful for you, painful for one officer, Staff Inspector Joe Bologna. Now, this makes a parody of itself because a man named is Bologna, and he's kind of chubby, and he's a baton wielding maniac in this particular video at Temple University. Now, the beauty of this video is that Bologna goes, as they said, they just went nuts and into a crowd and viciously attacks. And then I think the guy's name is Gork, one of the students at Temple University, engineering student. Now, the catch here is Gork gets arrested for assault. Now, Gork, after this video goes viral, is released. And Staff Sergeant Bologna, or Staff Inspector Bologna, has to turn himself in for aggravated assault and other crimes. I'm going to show you both of these videos, and I'm going to show you the assault, and you can make the judgment for yourself for whether or not Gork assaulted him or he assaulted Gork. You can make your decision, and you can ask the secondary question of if they put assault in the report and the reason why he brought Gork in. Is it a crime that he fabricated that report, seeing as you can see what happened? More apropos, from the larger police angle, because after all, we're having this larger conversation about policing, right? Even in the specific sense, definitely. How prevalent is that practice? Lying in the report, if indeed that went into the report. Do you think that is special there? And if that video wasn't there, would you have prosecuted Gork? These are questions that should be asked, because this is not unique. This is not a bad apple. This is how policing is done across the United States. And how prevalent is that? The gentleman who they shoved, who that gentleman fell, was said to have tripped. He didn't trip. How prevalent is this in regards to the way policing goes in all 50 states? And is that not problematic if we are putting people in prison on things from the word of cops that lie? Oh! How fascinating is the stuff that is taking place right now, right? Let's take a look at what is taking place with Officer Bologna. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you for allowing me to do it. If I look spacey, it's more to do, I haven't been to bed yet. So I apologize if I'm looking spacey. I am wide awake, believe it or not. Or at the very least, I feel wide awake. So, when a real man can't sleep, but at this point, it's early for me. Either way, I do the news. Especially when I saw this story, because the story energized me a little bit. Now, at the end of this, I'm going to ask you, is maximum justice necessary here? Meaning, whatever you think takes place, what is the responsibility of the cop? And if the responsibility of the cop is to maintain order or to take someone in custody if they do something about breaking order, taking into custody requires a certain degree of, we need to put as much force as necessary to subdue and take away. But what happens when there's more force distributed than the job requires? Infinite justice takes place. Should you give him a pass? Does bugging the cop necessitate that cop being allowed to abuse and batter you and then take you in and say you assaulted him? Whatever you think annoyed that cop, there are limits in what your society should be willing to accept. And it should not be willing to accept a cop attacking somebody who is basically peaceful, injuring, brutalizing, and anything else, even if that person is breaking the law, if that cop doesn't need to do that. It is vile and heinous that people would ask that question of, well, hey, I understand that cop killed that guy, and I understand that was a murder, but did that guy have a bad check? Doesn't matter. And do you know what it means when you ask me that? In the context of this guy that got killed, because it makes it seem like his life matters less than the bad check that you believe. As if whatever he did justified the fact that he was killed. I'm sorry, it does not. And it goes beyond the job description. Let's see what Officer Bologna did here. Is this maximum justice necessary? Maximum justice! Maximum justice. That's what took place. Maximum justice. Let's see some of that again. Yeah. Give me that maximum justice, Officer Bologna. Get out of here. Get out of here. Urgh. Officer Bologna. Bologna. I'm Officer Bologna. That's what I am. Bologna. Bologna. That's right. Officer goddamn Bologna. I'm Officer Bologna, baby. Officer Bologna. Officer Bologna got his guy. Eric Gork, engineering student. Bologna was going to charge Garrett with assault. Think about that. That doesn't rattle you to your core? 50 states, 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's populations in our prisons. What are you doing to manufacture this many criminals? China has 3 times our population and does not have that many people in their prisons. Now, let's look at this. Gork, charged with assault. You saw the video. Who assaulted who? And again, even if Gork was there protesting, the entire point of protesting is to be annoying. Was he violent? Who started the violence? Who is disrupting the order? And what does it mean when a cop disrupts the order? Who polices the police? I think that's a valid question. There's Officer Bologna. Get down. Bologna. Get away from me, Officer Bologna. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm making a mockery of this. I'm sorry. But I hope you get my point. My point is very basic, even though I'm being comical about this. He charged the guy with assault. He hit the guy in the head with his baton. Crack. Taking you to jail, buddy. Well, those charges were dropped at the moment that this viral video went viral. And Officer Bologna had to turn himself in on charges of aggravated assault and additional charges, apparently. Because, again, you brought that guy in for assault, right? And we watched the video, and that's not what it looks like. Now, the catch becomes they were trying to argue, people who were fans and advocates of Staff Inspector Bologna, that he didn't hit him in the head, he hit him on the shoulder. But that kind of misses the point in regards to shoving the entire crowd, waving it like a maniac. It's the dispensation of force. But more important than that, it's rational action and outcome. Meaning outcome matters from the standpoint of what you do, because we deal with human beings. And everybody wants their child, if they're dealing with a cop, to come home that night. Which means maximum justice, maybe, whether you're white, black, gay. You don't want that. You don't want that in your system where your kid, anybody can do anything and that cop can dispense maximum justice and the society says, was it a bad check? But Staff Sergeant Bologna had to turn himself in. Now, he turned himself in head held high, and as he went in on felony charges, the people came out to applaud him. It's apparently him coming back. Now, when Staff Sergeant went in, they basically applauded him. You know, they were supporting him. Now, when he comes out, it's right here.
We'll look you all away. Got it, brother.
All right, there's Joe Bologna, almost looking like he's choking up. He's got the Oxford shirt on. Next to him, John McNess.
Every last person in that crowd was white. Wow, man. Well, nevertheless, I guess it's a moot point. But the Temple University student, they've dropped the charges. More than 100 officers, some wearing their uniforms, gathered outside of Lodge 5 of the Fraternal Order of Police in show of support. They applauded Bologna, I keep calling it Bologna, I'm sorry, Bologna, as he left the lodge, escorted by his lawyer. Yes, I'm calling him Bologna on purpose, so fair enough. Escorted by his lawyer and police union, John McNesby, just after 8:30 a.m., to an SUV, waving to drive to the police district. A smaller crowd awaited him outside of the 15th District headquarters as he arrived to turn himself in. Now, he waved and shouted, "Thank you," who was booked, arraigned, and released on $10,000 unsecured bail, slipping out through the back door some 8 hours later. He's scheduled to return to court for a preliminary hearing on June 25th. Now, Gorick is somebody's son. The state pays your taxes. And if the state pays your taxes, we are basically paying you in some level to protect us. Don't you prioritize our life to any degree where you don't necessarily fly off the handle like this, where you have a philosophy at the very least on some level to prioritize life to some higher degree that doesn't allow maximum justice to be one of those things that are go-to, not to mention having a society that doesn't accept the fact that it is willing to off its citizens in this weird He-Man display of maximum justice on a moment's notice. I'm saying that when stuff like this happens, it legitimizes the protests. The second point I want to make, these are sacrificial lambs. Now, understand what I mean by this. This is policing all across the United States. It's just so happened that these were videotaped. You have people who will be currently sacrificial lambs for the various cities, localities, maybe even the federal government, when you see stuff like this take place, because they need to legitimize the system itself. Meaning the system has to be shown to work. And for the system to be shown to work, some people have to be prosecuted by definition. The nation's focus is on this right now. Netflix has black stuff in the top headings. And so now the cops are like, fuck, we got to do something about this. We got to police the police, right? We have to keep some level of legitimacy in the system, right? By definition, we have to prosecute these guys. It's nothing personal. We have to make sure that if we're looked at, perceived internally and externally, that the system itself has enough legitimacy and credibility to prosecute the mechanisms that make up the system itself when those things go beyond the pale. Especially with society looking at this and saying, that's a problem. And you get society saying, yeah, you're right. Blacks were right. Police brutality is a problem. You can see it in the polling as it goes up. You have to prosecute these guys. But your thing as society, though, these guys are sacrificial lambs. Don't overly be bothered by the fact the cops are cheering on cops. If you were a cop and somebody was prosecuting that cop, you would identify with that cop too. That has everything to do with cultural stuff. You were born into your context. They were born into theirs. Beyond that point, that doesn't necessarily mean that cops aren't dicks. Yes, they are. Part of that is cultural. Part of that, honestly, is the job itself and the way that the stuff gets organized, which is why people make this argument about defund the police. It's in the bricks of the police itself. Something needs to change in regards to how that is organized. But put yourself out of the fight for the moment. Because I don't really honestly believe that the fight that we're taking place is entirely about police, even though it's being focused entirely on police. If you are a cop and you are working in your job, and whether you're a dick or whether you're not a dick, for the moment you are always, every day, put into situations to which you have no power to change. Like you're basically the poor or the barely making it, being paid to basically guard a system that in no way have any capacity to change. You could go take criminals. Sometimes you deal with the worst parts of our society. Sometimes you're being dicks to people who are actually good in our society. But whatever that process is, you are continuously thrown into one situation after the next to which you have no power over stopping, preventing, from even keeping place. Even when you try to do the right fucking thing, ultimately you're stuck, impotent in the process. Now, I know that bothers you because you have a high suicide rate. And that suicide rate, I would imagine, are people internalizing that. But there are people who also externalize that when they get onto the streets and dispense maximum justice, with their mental issues associated with them doing that job, not to mention they might have had a screw loose or authority issues prior. Are you sick of that? Would you not want a system in a society where you're not constantly thrown up against the rock that you can't necessarily ever move? And for the other part to that, when people are making the argument about the cops, why are the cops there? Engage that point for the moment. I understand they're going to throw sacrificial lambs, but those sacrificial lambs are only being thrown up into the point where the national focus changes, which is the point I'm making here. You don't want sacrificial lambs. What you want is a fundamental change into the reason that those societies or those neighborhoods need cops in the first place. What you're looking for is investment. You're looking for that guy shouldn't be a trillionaire. Hell, maybe not even a billionaire if you have a society that has things that need to be done, including jobs for everyone. Hey, there's one. Hey, works projects, making sure each and every person has some level of solar power. You have all sorts of things that need to be done in your society, and you can't supply jobs for each and every person. Think about what we're talking about for the moment. We're basically saying we have communities that have been basically abandoned, and those communities that have been abandoned have tendency to perpetuate crime because, after all, they have been abandoned. Why don't we build up those communities, and what does it take to build up those communities? What type of investment from the standpoint of our society? Your society has literally no point to exist. You choose. You set the priorities of what you want. Now, if we're going to have this conversation of how do we get rid of cops, what I would propose to you is that is not something that's a magical thing. That's something that's very specific and clear to setting the priority of eliminating poverty in your country and building up the communities that have been left behind. And I will promise you, productivity of your society will grow, wealth will grow, the number of jobs, the number of companies, the lessening of crime in and of itself, and more importantly, the lessening of the need for anybody to keep order in your system because you've lessened the amount of disorder in your system by eliminating or getting rid of inequality. The only thing I'm proposing here is that it goes beyond the sacrificial lambs, that this is not what you accept. What you accept is a fundamental reinvestment in regards to our society, our community, and doing so legitimately. Not this, we're going to study. No, deal with the fact of poverty itself earnestly and honestly. And I would promise you this issue of crime will go down. This conflict between cops and African Americans and the guy being there with the knee on the throat. That guy wouldn't have been there with a knee on his throat in that particular community if that particular community was built up in a particular way that didn't need the cops there in the first place. Or at the very least, didn't incentivize lazy leaders to put cops in the first place. I'll end it here. I don't want to go, entirely too beyond the point. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.